The NBA trade deadline is exactly 7 days away, and we will be live on Chat Sports for that big day in the NBA. I will not be live. It will be Patrick Seaman and Harrison Graham breaking down all of the moves that happen in the association, but we will have you covered up from now until then. So make sure you are subscribed and don't miss our NBA trade deadline coverage. I am Nic Rohloff. We have a loaded show here on NBA Now by Chat Sports, and it's on De'Aaron Fox and Jimmy Butler. These two are the top two players that could be traded before the deadline in a week, and we'll break down the latest on these two NBA stars. We'll start with De'Aaron Fox after earlier this week, Charania reported that the Kings are expected to potentially deal All-Star De'Aaron Fox ahead of the February 6th trade deadline. There will be plenty of suitors, but it is believed that Fox has a target destination in mind ahead of 2026 free agency. Many people speculated it was the San Antonio Spurs, maybe some people throughout the Miami Heat. Well, that was basically confirmed through multiple sources, but Vincent Goodwill of Yahoo Sports had this report that the list for De'Aaron Fox is led by the San Antonio Spurs, but it does include Houston and Miami on that list. Now, Fox does hold some power here because if he were to be traded to a team that he does not want to go to, he could just tell them, yeah, I'm not going to sign long term, and he'll enter free agency in 2026, which is why it's likely that if a trade goes down in the offseason or in the next week, it would be one of those three teams mentioned by Goodwill. But the top destination, without a question, is San Antonio. The Spurs are the most poised team to trade for Fox when you talk about the assets they have, as well as the need for a true long-term point guard to pair up with Victor Wembanyama. Boy, do they look smart for potentially passing on a Trae Young trade this offseason and wait to see what happens with Fox coming available now, because this is a game changer, folks. He is an all-NBA type guard, a perennial all-star guard as well in the Western Conference. The one knock on him is his three-point shooting, but he is one of the quickest guards in the NBA. He can beat you off the dribble. He can beat you by getting inside. He likes to get to that mid-range. He can finish amongst the trees inside as well. He's a consistent 25-point-per-game scorer in the league. And he's not one of those point guards that's going to beat you by dishing it a ton like a Trae Young, like a Chris Paul, like a Tyrese Halliburton. He's not averaging double-digit assists, but he is still a playmaker for himself and others, and just because of his speed at getting to the rack, it provides a lot more spacing and open shots for his teammates around the perimeter. So it would be a great addition to pair him up with Victor Wembanyama, and we'll look at what the Spurs could offer, as well as why the Heat and Rockets could be involved as well. But predict it for me. Let me know your thoughts. Will De'Aaron Fox be traded before the trade deadline? Sacramento does not have to deal him now. They could wait until the offseason or next trade deadline. But let me know your thoughts. Type T for traded or type K for kept. Why the San Antonio Spurs? Why would Fox want to go there? Why should the Spurs trade for him? Well, Fox clearly wants to play with Victor Wembanyama. It's why the Spurs are labeled as the top destination for De'Aaron Fox. And to me, the Spurs also have the best possible package they can offer for De'Aaron Fox to make Sacramento quite happy in the return for an all-NBA caliber guard. When you look at what San Antonio can send them, you probably would try to keep Devin Vassell to be that third option to De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, as he can play the two, he can play the three. But you can trade Stephon Castle, who is a top 5 pick in this past NBA draft. He looks like a really good young player. He can defend, he can finish, and the Spurs have a boatload of draft capital. 9 tradable first-round picks. All of that got set into motion when they traded away DeJounte Murray to the Hawks 2 or 3 seasons ago, and they've continued to stockpile some first-round picks. And Fox would accelerate the timeline. The Spurs are playing much better than I anticipated this year, close to 500 basketball. You add Fox into that room. Maybe you keep Vassell. Maybe it's just Stephon Castle's salary filler and all those first-round picks they can trade. Obviously not all 9, but 4 or 5 potentially. And now you're talking about a big 3 that could be very intriguing in the Western Conference as those 3 continue to grow together. But if the Spurs don't trade for him, maybe it's the Miami Heat. And why could the Heat be the team for De'Aaron Fox? Well, De'Aaron is best friends with the Heat's young piece and core player, their captain, Bam Adebayo. They played college ball together at Kentucky. I believe they played together at the AAU level as well. It is such a good bond between the two where Bam Adebayo is actually a groomsman in De'Aaron Fox's wedding. Miami is always a competitive team who will never probably be in the lottery. They're always going to be at the bottom of that Eastern Conference at worst, fighting for a playoff spot. And obviously the lure of living in Miami as well is something that could be attractive for De'Aaron Fox. Play with your best friend, live in Miami, competitive organization. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the thing holding Miami back from potentially acquiring De'Aaron Fox is that they don't have a lot of draft capital to offer the Sacramento Kings. They only have one tradable first-round pick during the season. That becomes 2 this upcoming offseason. But if they were to try to do it in the next week, they only have one pick to offer right now. Now, they do have the Jimmy Butler thing floating around them right now, so maybe they acquire a couple first-round picks in favor of Jimmy Butler from Golden State, and now that number gets bumped up to 3 or 4, depending on how many picks get unlocked. They do also have some young talent, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and then the center, Kel'el Ware, who has been coming on as of late over the last 2 weeks, been spectacular, favorite for Rookie of the Year right now. So they do have young players to offer, but they just simply can't compete with the draft capital of a team like San Antonio and a team like Houston. Why could the Rockets be the team for De'Aaron Fox? Well, De'Aaron Fox actually grew up in Houston. Wasn't born there, but played high school ball in Houston. The Rockets are currently the number 2 seed in the Western Conference and have an elite young core where Fox could join them and immediately help elevate their floor and ceiling when you really look at it. I don't know how many pieces of their young core they would have to trade in a Fox deal potentially, but they've got 5+ tradable first-round picks, so they could satisfy the draft capital needs of Sacramento. They have 4 elite young guys in Jalen Green, Reed Shepard, Amen Thompson. Maybe I jumped the gun on Jabari Smith Jr., not an elite young guy at this point, but still a good young defensive piece. They can attach salary like Steven Adams, Fred VanVleet. Now, Amen Thompson might even be off the table with how well he has played over the past 2 weeks because he looks like an absolute freak of nature. And maybe the Rockets to say, yeah, we don't want to trade for Fox because we want to see what this young core can do. If he's available in the offseason, maybe we'll evaluate then. But maybe Houston doesn't want to rock the boat and just wants to see how far this young core can take them in this upcoming season due to the fact that they are already the 2nd seed in the Western Conference. But they certainly have a good offer to Sacramento to get the services of De'Aaron Fox. So predict it for me. Not if he gets traded before the deadline like earlier, but what team ultimately lands De'Aaron Fox via trade? It seems very likely he could be traded in the next 7 days before the deadline, but it seems almost guaranteed that Fox will not be a member of the Sacramento Kings heading into the next season, which is the last year on his deal. So what team will he ultimately be playing for when we get to that point? Let me know down in the comment section. And coming up in just a second, we are going to now shift our attention towards Jimmy Butler and what is the latest surrounding the Miami Heat forward on the trade market. But we are sponsored by PrizePicks, and I got to show love to PrizePicks because I love playing them every single day. The #1 daily fantasy sports platform. It's so easy to get in on the sports action. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stat projections, and you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. And with the big game almost here, they're giving away a free entry more than Patrick Mahomes passing yards. You can also check out the promos tab to tell any of the PrizePicks Super Sweat Millie winners big game lineups. If you tell a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can split of $1 million in promo funds, but you can continue to play basketball, hockey, college, sports as well, esports every single day. My entry for tonight, action in the association, more than Alex Sarr, 11.5 points against the Lakers without Anthony Davis, and more than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 1.5 3-pointers made against the Portland Trail Blazers. PrizePicks also offers promotions like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks selects player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Join me and the million others playing PrizePicks on a daily basis. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's talk about Jimmy Butler now and what could happen with the Heat forward as his trade saga continues on. Well, earlier this week, Brian Windhorst made a very interesting guarantee that he gets dealt before the deadline because previously to Windhorst saying that, it's very much up in the air. And to be honest, it still might be up in the air to if he gets dealt. But Windhorst said that from the sources he's talking to, really about 48 hours, definitely tonight, the Heat's price for Jimmy Butler has dropped. They're willing to do more than they were when this all started last month. The Heat are trying to get this done. And from my discussions with the league, I think some teams that thought they were out of this is coming back because it doesn't look like the Suns and Heat are going to be able to consummate a deal. I think we might see a team swoop in and get Jimmy at a bargain price. And obviously, people are wondering what teams could actually trade for Jimmy Butler. We know the Phoenix Suns are the most aggressive in terms of trying to trade for Jimmy Butler, and that is also Butler's preferred destination. But when Windhorst mentioned teams that could swoop in late and get a deal done, the two teams that I am primarily looking at are the Golden State Warriors, who were interested earlier on, then pulled out, but have been reported to be back interested in again, and the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, Phoenix still is the most aggressive team for Jimmy Butler. They want to get this deal done. I think that's why they traded their lone first-round pick a week ago to get 3 first-round picks from Utah, so they have more flexibility in a potential multi-team deal. But the issue with Jimmy Butler heading to Phoenix is that there's still that massive roadblock that is Bradley Beal. He's got 3 years left at $50 million plus every single season. It's an absolute obstacle, man. No one wants Bradley Beal's contract in terms of a contending team, which Bradley Beal is really only going to waive his no-trade clause for a contending team. And that's the issue. The teams that would be willing to take on Beal's contract in favor of getting draft capital, like maybe a Chicago Bulls, the Detroit Pistons, Utah Jazz, someone who has the cap space and isn't ready to compete, well, Beal's not going to waive his no-trade clause to go to those teams, so we're kind of just stuck here in the middle, which is why I don't believe the Suns will ultimately get a Jimmy Butler trade done. But what say you? Do you disagree with me? Do you think the Suns do find a way to get Jimmy to Phoenix and find a team to take on Bradley Beal's contract? Type Y if you think you do. Type N if you're like me and think there's no way. And I'll say this. I want to take it back a month ago when we first got the Jimmy Butler trade rumors, the Jimmy prefers to be traded. I always said on this channel and on the Heat Report, because I do host that channel here at Chat Sports, that my original prediction was the Golden State Warriors. I thought Jimmy Butler heading the Golden State made the most sense from the Warriors' perspective as well as Jimmy's perspective. Jimmy would become the second option on that team to Steph Curry. The Warriors need to find a star to help kind of keep them competitive in the final couple of years of Steph Curry's career. I think it's a perfect marriage for both sides. They can use a 3-and-D wing. I think him and Steph would work very well together. And it feels like it's the most likely option and scenario for Jimmy Butler ahead of the deadline as well. So people might be wondering, what would the trade offer look like? Well, it's been rumored that the Warriors don't want to attach Jonathan Kuminga in a trade. I understand that. Now, if I'm the Heat, I'd probably want Jonathan Kuminga. But maybe Miami lowers their price, like Brian Windhorst said, and it only takes some draft capital and really salary fillers. Andrew Wiggins has 3 years left on his deal at $30 million per season. He could fit that Heat roster pretty well, if we're going to be honest, as they're starting 3, connecting Hero to Ware and Bam in that front court. You attach salary as well. Kevon Looney, Gary Payton, Kyle Anderson maybe. And then NBA draft capital. 1, maybe 2 first-round picks. We'll see what it ultimately could be. But that is the most likely offer for Jimmy Butler in a 2-team or multi-team deal. All I know is that it is going to be a wild 7 days leading up to the February 6th trade deadline. New reports come out every single day on Jimmy Butler, De'Aaron Fox. You guys got players like Bogdan Bogdanovic. I got my Bogdanoviches confused. John Collins, Cam Johnson. So that's why you subscribe. There's going to be a lot of movement inside the NBA over the next 7 days. Subscribe. We'll be live on trade deadline day, but we'll also have you covered with trade candidates and rumors from now until next Thursday. So join the channel.